This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. This week's Parsha is Parshat Miketz, but we're not going to be focusing on the Parsha per se. The Parsha is the continuation of the Joseph and his brothers saga, and there's a lot to be said on that. In this week's Parsha, what we have is where we left off at the end of last week. We had Yosef had interpreted the dreams of the butler and the baker, but remained in prison. He had mistakenly put his hope and confidence in the butler who was reinstated. But then this week's parsha we have Paro's dreams, Yosef interpreting the dreams, the brothers all coming down, the famine, the brothers coming down, Yosef not revealing his identity to the brothers, insisting they come back with Binyamin, with the youngest brother Binyamin. In the end, they do come back with Binyamin, and then all seems to be fine. Yosef plants the goblet in the bags of Binyamin, sends his, as they're leaving, sends his men after them, catches up to them, finds the goblet that had been planted there, and brings them all back in order that Binyamin will become his slave. That's what takes place in this parsha. And then next week is Yehuda going forward and advocating, and Yosef ultimately revealing his identity. So we'll be able to pick up next week on trying to unpack and understand Yosef's actions, what he wanted, what he was accomplishing, and we'll work on that next week as the saga continues. This week I want to work more on Hanukkah. And Hanukkah is a very, very interesting holiday. Actually, it is the longest holiday that we have. It's the longest holiday that we have. Pesach is a 7-day holiday, granted outside of Israel because we had that historical unsurety of the actual date of the month. So therefore, we keep an extra day, 8 days, but it's a 7-day holiday. Even Sukkot is a 7-day holiday. The 8th day is its own separate holiday called Shmini Atzeret. And the Gemara goes through a number of 6 different ways that we see that it's a different holiday. We make Shehechianu on that 8th day, right? We don't say Shehechianu on the 7th day of Pesach, which was also Yom Tov, but we don't eat in the sukkah. We don't do lulav and etrog, right? It's not right. It's a different separate holiday. So Hanukkah is our longest holiday, and it is as we know, it is a rabbinic holiday. We have our Torah level holidays, which are the Sholosh Regalim, and when we have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and then we have rabbinic holidays. And so far we have 2 main rabbinic holidays. We have Purim and Hanukkah. And each of the 2 and soon to be 3rd rabbinic holiday, each align with one of the 3 Torah pilgrimage holidays, the Shalosh Regalim, as they are referred to. So Purim aligns with Shavuot, the time that our Torah was given, because the Gemara says that by Purim, Kimu v'kiblu, that we re-accepted the Torah me'ahava. We lovingly re-accepted the Torah at that point. And of course, Hanukkah is going to align with Sukkot, because Sukkot is the time when the Anani HaKavod reappeared after the sin of the golden calf and after Yom Kippur and the second tablets, and we started the building of the Mishkan, and the clouds reappeared. And Hanukkah, of course, is the rededication of the Mishkan. The third one, so some celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut as a simple national day. Others give it more religious significance. It certainly is a step on the way towards the Geula, towards the redemption. But that ultimate third rabbinic holiday will align with Pesach, and that will be Zman Geulatenu, the full Geula, the full redemption. Hanukkah is a very, very strange sort of holiday. We refer to it as a galut. We were in exile, even though we were in Israel, even though we had the Beit HaMikdash. The Beit HaMikdash was standing, but it had been defiled by the Yevanim, by the Greeks, and we were in a desperate state spiritually, that the whole culture of the Greek culture, with its science and its love of beauty and art and all that, had made tremendous inroads into Judaism. There were many mityavnim, many who had become Greek-like, who had adopted that culture. And as is often the case, even today, right? Often it's the Jews who become anti-Jewish, who become our worst enemies, right? It's sadly sometimes it's Israelis, some Israelis, right, who become the harshest critics of Israel, and they're always slamming. So typically we become our own worst enemies. Right, and you have the Jewish Voices for Peace, which is a rabidly anti-Jewish, anti-Israel organization. But we're Jews, so how? Right? That's been a problem throughout our history, and certainly that was an issue during this time. And we know that there was a revolt that we speak about in the Al Hanisim that we now add into our Amidah and also into our Birkat HaMazon, grace after meals. And the Al Hanisim speaks predominantly about the military victory, the miraculous military victory. And of course, there is the miracle of the oil. The miracle of the oil is that there was enough pure oil to last one day, and it lasted 8 days. What happened on day 9, my friends? What happened on day 9? Great, it lasted 8 days. Then what happened? What happened on day 9, my friends?
I think they were able to get enough oil to rekindle.
Yeah, so exactly, Cheryl. The two approaches is the oil was either a 4-day voyage away, so they were able to travel there, get the oil, and come back and reestablish the supply line. So on day 9, they were good to go. Or another approach is they were all tamei, they were all ritually impure, and the process of purification, if you are tamei mate, if you have become impure through contact with physical contact with a corpse, with a dead body, so then there is a 7-day purification process involving the para aduma, the ashes of the red heifer. So by day 8, they were able to become tahor, purified, and be able to produce their own oil. But whatever it was, by day 9, we were good to go. Now, we make a very big deal about this oil, the miracle of the oil. But it seems to be somewhat insignificant, meaning they had not been lighting the menorah for many, I don't know how long, but for a long period of time. I don't know if it was months or years, probably years, leading up to that point where they were able to reclaim the Beit HaMikdash. The menorah had not been lit for a long time. Upon the destruction of the temple, right? It has not been lit since then. So why is it such a big deal? Let's say it had not, there was no miracle of the oil. Okay, so on day 9, they would have restarted lighting the menorah. They reclaimed the temple. Had they not found that one flask of oil, then what would have happened? Then they would have waited. On day 9, they would have either traveled 4 days there, 4 days back, or gone through the purification process. And on day 9, they would have started kindling the lights. Or had they found that one flask and it lit, and then it burned out after 1 day, as would be expected. So they lit for 1 day, right? Mitzvah baliyadcha al tachmit sana. We're taught when you have a chance to do a mitzvah, don't let it go to waste. You grab that mitzvah that you can do right away and do it right away. Actually, there's an interesting halacha. If a person is imprisoned and is told that he can go to Minyan 1 day, so what should he do? Should he wait for Yom Kippur? Should he wait for Purim? They discuss. No, you should go to Minyan that day. Right? They'll let you out for 1 day. Right? You have a chance to do a mitzvah, you do it. So they found the flask, even though there's only enough for 1 day. They would have lit it. It would have burned out. Good. 7-day hiatus. On day 9, they're back in business. So this miracle seems to be a strange sort of miracle. Not the biggest deal. And yet we make a major deal out of this miracle. So Rabbi David Foreman has a very, very interesting theory, idea that he proposes. Is there anything in the Torah, any event that took place in the Torah that would seem to be similar to this flask of oil supposed to burn 1 day and it just keeps on burning? It burns for 8 days.
You're asking if there are other miracles we know about or something to do with the extension of the expectation?
An event in the Torah that somehow is similar to this burning of the oil that kept on burning. Cheryl?
Something, but I'm not sure whether it's in the Torah. But it's about a woman who was very poor, and a miracle occurred.
Okay. Good. So there's an issue. I think it was Elisha, not Eli. I think it was Elisha, a very poor woman, and a miracle was done for her. She was told by, I think it was Elisha, to gather many kalim, many vessels. She had a little bit of oil and she kept pouring, and it kept on going. That's interesting. But I'm thinking of something in the Torah itself. Right? Well, I'm going to phrase it a little bit differently, and then you're all going to jump. Okay? The way I'll phrase it a little bit differently is, do we have an issue in the Torah of something getting burned but not being consumed? Right?
A snare boil.
Yeah, the snare boil ba'esh ve'nenu ukal. Right?
Yeah.
So we have the oil over here that is not being consumed. It's burning but not being consumed. And we have the burning bush, which is burning and not being consumed. Now, it's very interesting if you think about it. This was the last of our clear national miracles. Right? This was the last. This took place during the second temple, the second Beit HaMikdash. This is after the Purim. The Purim miracle was as we were returning at the end of the Babylonian exile. in order to start the Second Commonwealth and the building of the Second Temple. This is hundreds of years later, towards the latter part of the Second Temple. So this is the last of our national miracles. Probably the first of our national miracles in the Torah would be the burning bush with Moshe, the bush that is burning, ve'einenu ukal, and it's not getting consumed. So we almost have these bookends, as he calls it, of our first national miracle and our last national miracle, and the common denominator that they share is something is burning, but it's not getting consumed. So if we can, let's take a, yes, Cheryl.
I'm thinking of Abraham who got thrown into the furnace.
Yeah.
And he didn't
Yeah.
get consumed, but his brother.
Okay, that's interesting. Good. But yeah. But there too, he's not getting consumed. But here we're talking about something that is fuel for a fire, and that normally gets depleted, gets used up, and here it is not. So let's take a look at the burning bush issue. Let's go to page 300. Shmot Perek Gimel, Pasuk Aleph. Chapter 3, verse 1. And the question that we want to be focusing on is, why was Moshe chosen? So we're going to start with the burning bush, but then we're going to go back to the beginning of Moshe and see what were Moshe's credentials to be chosen as the Moshiach Shel Yisroel, as the Redeemer of Israel. So let's go to Perek Gimel in Shemot chapter 3. Moshe Yeroa Etzon Yitro no Kohen Midyan. Moshe was shepherding the flock of his father-in-law Yitro, and he brought the tzon achar hamidbar, well into the desert wilderness. Vayavo el har ha'elokim, and he came to the mountain of God, Choreva. Very strange. What is the mountain of God? What is the mountain of God? So Rashi says, Al Shem Hatid. It was called the mountain of God based on the future. Meaning, what mountain is this? The mountain that would be the mountain of God, Har Sinai. So we're calling it Har HaElokim because of the future. Okay, so if the Torah is choosing to refer to it as Har Elokim because of the future, it's leading us in a certain direction. It's giving us a little bit of a tip over here as to where we are heading. Yes, Ora.
Not every mountain is Har Elohim. It was all created by the same power, no?
Yes. Every mountain is a mountain created by God. But if we say that he came to Har Elokim, then we're saying there's something specific about this mountain.
It supports your point that in the future it will be very special. But
yes. And the Torah wants us to know that the mountain that he came to is the mountain that in the future will be Har Sinai. Right? It's important that we read this episode keeping in mind that Moshe is at Har Sinai. And then what happened? Vayiram Malach Hashem Elav, an angel of God appeared to him, Bilabat Eish, in a flame of fire, Mitoch Hasneh, from the midst of this bush, Vayar, and he saw, Moshe saw, Vihine, and behold, Hasneh Bo'er Ba'esh, the sneh was burning on fire, Vasne einenu ukal, but it was not being consumed. Vayomer Moshe, Moshe said, Asurana, let me go off to the side over there. Let me turn. Ve'ereh, and see, et hamareh hagadol hazeh, this amazing sight. Madua lo yivar hasneh. Why is that bush not burning? Vayar Hashem kisar lirot. God saw that Moshe had turned to see, and he called out for him from the midst of the sneh, and he said, Moshe, Moshe. And the rest we know is history, as they say. Take the shoes off your feet. The place where you're standing is holy. And I want you, I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. And he said, I saw the torture of my nation in Egypt. I've heard their cries. I know their pain. I will go down to save them, to bring them to the land flowing with milk and honey. And therefore, I want you to be the one that I sent to Paro. Okay, that's what follows. But it's a little bit strange. Hashem saw that he had turned to see. Right? That was the big deal over here. Right? No, the whole Pasuk Bet and the start of Pasuk, the end of Pasuk, the Pasuk Gimel is a little bit strange. And Moshe said, let me turn and see. Right? The story should have been, there was this burning bush, and God spoke to Moshe. We put a lot of emphasis on Moshe saw, and he turned to see, and God saw that he turned to see. Why are we making such a big deal out of this? And why was Moshe chosen in the first place? So let's double back, and let's see what the Torah tells us about Moshe. And then we'll double back again in the end and see the Hanukkah parallels. So if you go to page 296, actually 298, Perek Bet, Pasuk Yud Aleph, chapter 2, verse 11. This is the first thing we hear about Moshe doing, in terms of him doing. We hear about him being taken, put into a basket, him being taken, him being raised, him being nursed, him being returned. But what does Moshe himself do? So Pasuk Yud Aleph, it was in those days Moshe grew up and he went out to his brothers and he saw their burdens and he saw an Ish Mitzri. He saw that an Ish Mitzri hitting an Ish Ivri, beating him mercilessly. He turned this way and that way. He smote the Egyptian, killed the Egyptian, saved the life of this Jew, and hid him in the sand. He went on the second day and he saw two Jews, two Ivrim, who were arguing. And he said to one of them, why do you hit your friend? He interceded, and they got angry. Who made you the officer, the judge over us? Moshe realized, will you kill us like you killed the Egyptian? Moshe realized that word was out. He was in danger. In fact, Paro heard about this. Moshe had to run for his life. He goes to Midian, goes to a well, and there the daughters of Yisroel came to water their flocks. Shepherds came and chased them away. Moshe stood up for them and saved them. And he ended up staying there, marrying one of Yisroel's daughters, and becoming a shepherd, which then leads us to his shepherding out in the next to Har Elokim and the burning bush. So what qualities do we see in Moshe? And all of a sudden Moshe is chosen to be the Redeemer of Israel. What qualities do we see in Moshe?
Justness or...
Good. Moshe gets involved. He sees oppression and he gets involved even though he ends up losing much from it. He sees, the first thing he sees, this Jew being beaten almost to death mercilessly by an Egyptian, and he was a powerful Egyptian prince at that point. he gets involved and he helps. And then two Jews fighting, he gets involved and he gets hurt by that badly. He needs to run away from Egypt. You'd think he learned his lesson. You think he learned his lesson. But what does he do? When he's there running, he encounters the daughters of Yitro, who are being chased away by the other shepherds, and he doesn't learn his lesson. What does he do? He gets involved, and he saves them. See, here's a person who sees a situation where there is a lack of justice, it's not just, it's not right what's happening, and to his own danger, to his own detriment, he gets involved. That's one thing that we see. See, he cares about others and is willing to put his own neck out in order to help others. And how about over here by the sneh? What is the big deal that he turned to see? Yes.
I think that in all of these events, you see that he is very present and wants to get in with, to be involved. So he sees this bush that's burning. He wants to understand it. He wants to engage with it, just as he engaged with all of the other situations.
Okay, nice. He wants to get involved. Good. And let's take this bush a little bit further over here. We all have our preconceived notions, and we all try to fit the world into our boxes, right? And we make sure that things make sense. Actually, I write about this a little bit in the newsletter. It's going to go out later today. Biologically, we all have blind spots, right? Our retina is made up of all these cells that can see the reflection of light. Anything we see is light being reflected off and our retina catching it. And then it sends that through the optic nerve to the brain. But there's a place where the optic nerve connects to the retina. At that point, there are no light sensitive cells. That's where the nerve is connecting. That's where the piping is to send to the brain. So we all have a blind spot. Both our eyes have a blind spot. But why don't we see a little white circle, two white circles whenever we look at anything? Why don't we see it? Because our brain masterfully fills in that blind spot. Our brain sees what is around it and fills in what should be there. That's what we physiologically, that's what we do. Our brain is constantly filling in what should be there. And when it comes to other events also, our brain fills in what should be there. So in my newsletter, I take this in a slightly different direction than we're going to go now. But our brain, it's fascinating. You can Google it and look it up. It's fascinating. Our brain is filling in what it thinks should be there. And we do that also not just with that which we see in a physical sense, but also when we do see something, we make sense of it. We put it into a certain box that makes sense to us, right? And that's why in our very, very fractured political world today, right? So, the people who are on this side of the aisle cannot see anything bad done by anyone on their side of the aisle and cannot see anything good on the other side of the aisle, and vice versa, right? In other words, we put everything into our box of understanding, And anything this person does is bad, anything this person does is good. And vice versa. On all sides of the divide, we take everything has to fit into our view. So, do bushes burn without getting consumed? No, that doesn't happen. So a regular, normal person would see that and would imagine, yeah, the bush is burning. It's burning very slowly. I can't see the part that's burning. The inside is burning. That's why the outside looks like it's not burning. It's not being consumed. We would make sense of it. Moshe was a person who saw more deeply, who was willing and able to recognize that there's more to the picture than meets the eye. Excuse me. There's more than just the physical here, right? Yes, in a physical sense, in a physical world, then it is the bush that supplies the fuel. And as it's burning, the fuel is gradually being depleted until there's nothing left. But it's possible that's only in the physical world. But things can be fueled in a non-physical manner also. And God, so to speak, can supply the fuel. God could have it burning without the physical fuel being depleted. What is powering it? God is powering it. It doesn't all need to be this neat physical package where everything makes perfect sense and everything works on a physics, chemical, biological level. So Moshe really had the ability to see. He had the ability to see amongst people when there was injustice and to get involved. And there was the ability to see beyond when it came to the spiritual, to see beyond that which was physical and make sense physically, and to see that which is happening. So it's both an ability to see. One is amongst mankind, seeing the injustice and acting. The other is seeing the world, seeing behind this. There's a book by Rabbi Akiva Tates called World Mask, that this world is considered the world. It's a mask, right? That we discussed more Purim time. It's a mask that makes it look like everything is natural. By Kriyat Yamsuf, by the splitting of the sea, there was a strong easterly wind, meaning everything that takes place miraculously, it's always clouded. It's always behind the mask, and there's always something that one can attribute. Oh, that happened because of this or that. Yes, the 10 plagues. Yes, well, there was this algae, right? That caused the water to turn red, and that caused the fish to die, and then the frogs all came jumping out because it was no longer a hospitable habitat, and that then led to this, and then we can always make give our natural, well, that caused this and this caused that. Or we can see deeper. Moshe was a seer. He saw injustice amongst people. He saw that God's hand behind all that happened over here. And those were two qualities that are almost one quality in terms of the ability to see deeply. Right? To see past the superficial. I'm a prince. I'm a powerful person. And that's what happens. They're slaves. He's getting beaten. To see past just the surface and to go deeper. Yes, Torah.
It just struck me the word hasne in Hebrew. If you read it backwards, there is nes in there.
Interesting. Hanes. Sne, Hanes. Interesting. Interesting. Now, we mentioned before that the Torah is kind of tipping us off. He came to Har Sinai. Well, Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, actually involved these two aspects. Again, first of all, it says by Har Sinai that the mountain was smoking. The mountain was on fire. Yet it was not getting consumed. Let's find that pasuk. I saw some eyebrows went up. Let's find that pasuk. Take a look at page 404, Perek Yud Tet, chapter 19, pasuk Yud Chet, Yud Tet, 19:18, page 404. Let's go back to verse 16. On the third day, when it was morning, there was thunder and lightning and heavy cloud on the mountain. The sound of the shofar very powerful. The entire people in the camp shuddered. Moshe brought the people forth from the camp toward God. They stood about the mountain. All of Mount Sinai was smoking. Hashem ba'esh, because Hashem had descended upon it in the fire. Vayal Ashano, its smoke ascended, Ka'ashana Kivshan, like the smoke of the furnace, and the whole mountain was shaking. It was on fire over there, but not getting consumed. Now, by Har Sinai, not necessarily right now, but soon after, do we have Moshe putting himself in danger to defend others? So he defended the Ivri who was being beaten up by the Mitzri. He defended those two Ivri who were fighting with one another, got involved. He defended the daughters of Yitro who were being chased away by the shepherd. After the Chet HaEgel, after the sin of the golden calf, what did Hashem say I'm going to do? I will destroy them and make a nation out of you. And Moshe says, if you destroy them, mecheni nami sifrecha, do me a favor, erase me from this little book of yours called the Torah. I don't want to have any part of this. So Moshe defended the Ivri. Moshe defended the daughters of Yitro from their oppressors. And then Moshe goes up against God to defend the Jewish people from being obliterated after the Chet HaEgel, after the sin of the golden calf. That's who Moshe is always willing to go up against. When there is injustice, Moshe is willing to go up against. So we have the burning bush that's being burned, not consumed. We have Har Sinai, and then at the very other end of the spectrum, the other bookend of Jewish history, clear miracles, we have Hanukkah. And Hanukkah has two aspects, two miracles that we are celebrating, re-experiencing. Right? You know, the question is always asked if there was enough oil to burn. The most famous question of Hanukkah. There was enough oil to burn for 1 day and it burned for 8 days. So how many days are miraculous? 7 days of Miraculous. So it should be a 7-day holiday, not an 8-day holiday. And there are hundreds of answers. The simplest answer, the most basic answer that's given is, one is because of a celebration of the miracle of the war. And the 7 days are for the miracle of the extra days of oil burning. And we'll double back to that soon. So what are the two miracles that we're focusing on when it comes to Hanukkah? It's the battle, and it is the oil. The oil is, and what do we say were the two aspects of Moshe? His seeing oppression and being willing to act on it, even to his own detriment, and seeing beyond the physical and understanding that there's a power that truly powers everything, sometimes under the guise, under the mask, the masquerade of the physical, and sometimes without that mask, without the masquerade of the physical. And what are the two events of Hanukkah, miraculous events? The battle, where we were a nation that was being oppressed, we're not allowed to serve, and the Maccabim went to battle to save the oppressed, and they won. The few beat the many, because what powers is not the physical strength and prowess and marksmanship and level of weaponry, but ultimately what powers it is Hashem. And the oil burning clearly showed that what is actually powering is not the physicality, that's the mask. And at any point, that will not get consumed, right? There are those that answer the famous question about the 8 days by saying, well, on each day, only 1/8 of it was burnt. So each day was an equal miracle. But Hanukkah is teaching us these two ideas, that if there is a wrong, we go out and we fight for what is right, even if it looks like it's a no-win situation, even if it will be to our own detriment, it seems, we go out and we fight. And also we recognize the power that is powering everything. We recognize the spirituality, the godliness, the Hashem that's in everything. And that is actually what is doing the powering and nothing else. We see deeper. And that leads us to another one of the answers to the 8-day Hanukkah question. And that's based on the Gemara Tanis tells a story. Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa was very, very, very poor. And Gemara tells lots of stories about him and his family. One of the stories it tells is that his daughter on one Friday mixed up the container of oil with the container of vinegar. And she lit her Shabbos candles. She poured from the container of vinegar into her little candles, and she lit them. Now, vinegar doesn't burn, but oil is lighter. Oil will go to the top of the vinegar, and therefore the oil, the little bit probably that was left in the cups from last week, had some oil that floated to the top. So she lit it, and it lit. And then it's Shabbos. And then she realizes her mistake. And she realizes the candle's going to go out in a few moments. And it's past the point where she can relight and rekindle or add anything. So she said to her father, Abba, I confused the two, and I filled the cups with vinegar instead of oil. And he said to her, not a problem. The same God that tells the oil to burn can tell the vinegar to burn. And the Gemara says they continued burning not just the usual hours, they burned through the night, through the day, and then they used that for Havdalah after Shabbos. So there are those that use that episode in the Gemara to answer the 8-day question. Right? If there's enough oil to burn one day, and it burned 8 days, so 7 days are miraculous. Why do we celebrate 8 days? Because we need to look deeper and realize that oil burning is also a miracle. Who's to say oil should burn? Who's to say all that which is natural should happen? Why are there laws of nature? Why is there this incredible consistency throughout the entire universe? It's all coming from Hashem. And therefore, don't forget that the fact that oil burns is also a miracle. We often say, I think from Rav Dessler, the definition of nature is miracles that we've grown accustomed to. That's what nature is, right? Food falls from the heavens. Oh, the manna falls from the heavens. It's a miracle. It grows out of the dirt, out of the earth, and that's natural. That's normal. Right? Nature is miracles we've grown accustomed to, and therefore we celebrate the 8 days to stay focused and not be fooled by nature, but to see beyond what is actually powering everything, whether it was powering the bush, powering the fire on Mount Sinai, powering the candles, the lamps by the menorah of the Chashmonaim, or powering all that goes on in our lives. Yes, Ora.
So I think this comes from the Kabbalah, that 7 is a sacred number in Judaism for the physical daily experience, and 8 is a shift to the spiritual.
Yeah, Lamala miderach hateva, going beyond the natural cycles. Yeah.
So maybe another reason why it's 8 days, because of the spiritual.
Yeah, that's why Brit Milah, circumcision, is on the 8th day, because that's going beyond simply the physical and entering up into that other realm. Yeah.
The other point I wanted to say, with Moshe at Har Sinai after the sin of the golden calf, when he opposes God, I see him showing compassion rather than because justification would have been, okay, they didn't follow my rules, they go.
100%. He's there to help the oppressed, even when the oppressor is God, so to speak. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Absolute compassion, and there for the underdog, willing to go to battle against God to save them. Yeah, absolutely. So Hanukkah actually is this almost bookend, as Ray Foreman puts it, to the events that took place there, and they mirror these attributes of going to battle to help the oppressed, going against all odds, and seeing that the real power, whether it's in victory of battle, whether it's the oil burning, whether it's in our own lives, the real power is coming from above. It's not that which we see. And it's just interesting. It's just something I shared this morning with my Minyan group. There are different ways that one could light the Chanukiah. The Gemara says the actual mitzvah is to light one candle per household each night. One day 1, one day 2, one day 3. The Gemara says the Mahadrin, the way to beautify the mitzvah, is that everyone in the household should light one candle. Not one per household, but one per person. There are 4 people in the household. You light 4 on the first day, 4 on the second day, 4 on the third day, 1 per person per night. Mahadrin mina mahadrin is that you light, every person is lighting, according to the Ashkenazic minhag, every person is lighting, but not 1 every night. 1 the first night, 2 the second night, 3 the third night, 4 the fourth night. Now, how many of you have ever seen anybody doing any less than 1 the first night, 2, 3, 4? Everyone does mahadrin min mahadrin. Everyone does the best of the best. And it seems strange. By every mitzvah, we have the possibility of a hidur mitzvah. You can get a regular etrog, you get a really beautiful etrog, right? You can always do something in a very muhudar way, but that is not the standard, right? The standard is the standard, and you want to beautify it, great, beautify it. Whereas by Hanukkah, the standard is the beautification. The standard is to do the mahadrin min mahadrin. And you don't find anybody doing anything less than that. So what is unique about this Hanukkah mitzvah that everyone does the mahadrin min mahadrin to the point that that's become standard? The standard is the mahadrin min mahadrin, the best of the best, the most upgraded upgrade of way to do the mitzvah is the way that everyone does it. Why? Why specifically over here do we standardize the highest upgrade? Everyone travels first class over here. There's no coach. No coach. Everyone's in first class over here. Why by this mitzvah do we all go above and beyond?
We love light.
We love light, okay? When it comes to spreading light, we don't hold back. We have to spread as much light as we possibly can, okay? And I was thinking, yeah, Cheryl?
It also comes at a time when the moon is disappearing, and then it starts again to get fuller. So maybe this is connected to the idea that it's renewal.
That's interesting. That's interesting, right? We always point out that the Jewish holidays are usually the 15th of the month. That's the time of the moon, right? The full moon, right? That's an interesting point you're making, Cheryl. How this starts off as it's waning, and then as it reappears and starts to grow again. So it is this renewal. So you would say that we need to inject all of our enthusiasm into that. Nice to make them mahadrin.
Isn't it also at the winter equinox, or the time when the days are the shortest?
Yeah.
So the light is the least?
Thereabout, yeah. So we've got to add that light. Nice answers. A thought that I had, again, I'm not saying any one of these is right or wrong, just a thought that I had is like we started off saying, we didn't really need this miracle, right? We could have not found any oil at all and started up again on day 9. We could have found 1 flask and gotten 1 day in, 7-day break, continue then on day 9. So over here, Hashem was going, so to speak, above and beyond to show us that he cares, that he's with us, that when we make that effort to find that 1 flask and light that 1 flask, he'll make it last and last until we're ready to go again. So it was, so to speak, like Hashem going above and beyond to show his care for us. So therefore, we go above and beyond and do this mitzvah in the best way possible. But the idea is to see past the physical and appreciate, lahodot, lahalel, l'shimcha hagado, to praise and to thank your great name, right? Al nisechav, al niflotechav, al yeshuatecha, for your miracles, for your wonders, for your saving. And that's not just on the national scale, but that's also on our day-to-day personal scale, personal dealings and involvement, to see that power, the Yad Hashem, the hand of Hashem, that is powering everything that goes on. Okay, my friends, good. Yes, Cheryl.
So this year I did something different because I think I saw that you were lighting your candles outside your house by your front door. And so I did that this year, but I'm really not
You lit
happy
outside
with
my
it.
front door?
Huh?
You lit outside my front door? No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm not
Good.
so
I'm sorry.
happy with this though, because it's out there and then I don't see it.
So there are different ways to do it. You can do it. You can do it if you want. You can do it inside your house in a way that, right, if it could be seen, right. The issue is when I light it in my house, then it really can't be seen out in the street. So that's why I opt to do by my doorway, which is also not seen by the street, but it's actually, it's by the doorway where where ideally it's meant to be put. So since it's not going to be seen by the street, I do it by my doorway. But you can really do it either one, right? You're not bound to do it the way that I do it.
Is it okay to have another Hanukkah like by the window and like light one in the house?
Sure, you can do that also. You
Yeah,
make the bracha once,
yeah,
but then you can light more. Yeah.
Yeah, we just have upstairs like another one, so everybody can see in the window. But we have the one that we can watch inside the house.
Yeah.
With one blessing. Yeah.
Only one bracha, correct. I mean, the two brachot, we make the two brachot once. Yeah. Okay, everybody. Hanukkah Sameach. Good seeing everybody. Next week we'll return to our usual Parsha programming.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Hanukkah Sameach,
Bye.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.